Welcome in to Sports Around the Bar. Today we are talking college football, and you may notice our college football analyst, Hannah, is out today, so you're going to have to put up with Drew, unfortunately, for the fourth time this week.
Yeah, someone told me I was off, so I'm sitting here throwing back beers, and the next thing I get a phone call from my boss saying, it's time to go to work, and I'm like, huh, what?
From your boss. I love that I'm the boss. Okay? I'm just glad you recognize that.
No, only
that I am the boss.
I only say that for them. You're not really.
No, I do appreciate you coming through, buddy. Thanks for that, and we are glad to have each and every one of you guys here. We're going to talk some college football today. Normally, we like to go over what happened in the last week, but let me tell you, there weren't too many of those games that were exactly worth watching. It was a very slow week of college football, but we are glad that this week won't be the same. Consider preseason for college football over now. Every week from now on should have interesting matchups, and this week definitely has a bunch of them.
Pooks, it's good to see you, man. Glad you could join us. Still love the name, man. Still love the name.
Absolutely. Well, let's start with our first game of the week. I know what you're saying. I don't love college as much as I love the NFL, but it's Saturday, and I need to be entertained, damn it. What am I supposed to be watching? And let me tell you, the first game you need to watch, USC going up against Utah. This one is in USC, downtown LA. This might be the last chance for the Pac-12 to get a champion into the college football playoff. Utah is the last significant unbeaten for the conference, with Oregon having lost to Auburn at the beginning of the season during week 1, and then USC lost last week to BYU. It was theirs for the running, Drew. It was their entire – the conference was theirs, and then they dropped it to BYU. Not the first team to do that this year.
Right.
Utah's already beaten BYU in that game. This one is going to be interesting to watch because the Pac-12 future is almost at stake here. Maybe we see Oregon creep back in, but for the most part, it's Utah or bust for the Pac-12.
Ian, it's an honest mistake. I understand, man, and sometimes you just can't help being this good looking. I get a lot of that comparison. Sometimes it's Brad Pitt, but Hannah works. It works.
Sometimes it's Jabba the Hutt. But there is no in between, right?
The sexy Jabba the Hutt.
Okay, wearing the Leia bikini.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
You didn't know about that one?
I did actually. I've got a bunch of toys. We'll move forward, and we'll talk about the rest of this game later.
Hold on. The only question I got about this, and to be honest, we're talking about Utah hopefully making a run. What if BYU beats Washington this week? Does that give BYU the right to be in the top 25 in the nation?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm asking because they're not.
They beat, I know, but they beat, 23 last week in USC that stole that from Stanford after they beat them. They beat a program like Tennessee that even if that's not impressive to a lot of people this season, that's still a big program for a team like BYU to come in and beat. The defense is solid. They have the Mormon Manziel in Zach Wilson. They have talent on this team. I know. Why would you want to be compared to Johnny Manziel? Even if it's college, would you want to be compared to Johnny Manziel? I think you can miss me with that one.
I just don't like the whole Mormon Manziel thing. Hannah says sorry she's missed tonight, but she will be back next Wednesday. We're just glad you're here in the comment section.
Absolutely. And Ian says it's going to be a tale of two teams for USC. Depends on which one shows up. The one that wants it or the team that thinks they are owed it. And I agree with you, but you can't roll over against this BYU team. They are stout defensively. They have Zach Wilson, who's been throwing the ball all over the place, and it looks very, very dynamic for them. Everyone's been counting BYU out. I almost said that like a Canadian. Been counting them out all season. But I was saying, watch out Utah. I was saying, watch out Tennessee. Even last week, I said, watch out USC. I've been all over BYU this season. I'm saying, watch out Washington this time.
Wash out Washington.
Wash out Washington.
Watch out Washington.
Washington does have their hands full with that game. Maybe they could sneak in Pac-12-wise if it's Washington and they run the table, but I don't see it, Drew. I really don't. I think this is going to be Utah or bust.
Going back to Utah versus the USC game, how much does that loss to BYU, does that hurt USC in the future? Do you think that actually pushes them over to maybe beat a team like Utah?
Well, I don't think a loss is ever a good thing, especially in college football. And I get what you're saying motivation-wise.
Right.
But when it comes to like your record and the idea that USC is back as a program and actually had a chance to make a run for it in a weak Pac-12, but the Pac-12 hasn't been in the college football playoff, so I think that will kind of skew things when the committee decides at the end of the season.
Right.
Right now, them losing to BYU just like derailed the entire train, in my opinion. Yes, they beat Stanford. That was a huge win, and then they come in and lay a goose egg against a good team. I think BYU winning that game sets USC back in a huge fashion. Even if they beat Utah, they're probably not going to sneak their way back into the top 25, in my opinion. I think this team is going to struggle in a matchup against a better team in Utah.
Jonathan, good to see you as well, man. Glad you're always with us when we do Sports Around the Bar. Let's get into the Washington versus BYU. You know, Washington is, in my opinion, one of those teams that, you know, it's a good organization, but when you sit there and you look at BYU coming, or them going to BYU in front of their home crowd, I know you had it as like, you kind of think BYU's already upset two teams.
And it was overtime, so they didn't win convincingly, but it was overtime.
But do you think
games.
Washington is a good enough team to beat YU?
Yes. I think the biggest matchup for me is going to be the pass defense for Washington, which has been fantastic these first couple weeks. Are they going to be able to slow down Zach Wilson in that passing offense that kind of has not been as talked about as it should be with the way Zach Wilson's been playing? I think this is going to be the key matchup. This could go either way. I think BYU is the dog here for a good reason, but this is still a team that won in overtime 2 weeks in a row. So they have that grit that it takes to get things done.
Right.
They have the passing attack that they've been missing for years past. Usually BYU's a little bit more of a smash mouth, run them out team. This year they're throwing a lot better. Right.
Yeah.
And the defense is there for BYU as well. I think the Huskies have their hands full in this one. Washington needs to stay on top of it, especially in the road. This is so tough winning on the road against this defense that's as good as BYU's is.
Right. I'll let you
Sure.
catch your get a little parched as you were talking about football.
Exactly. And Ian says, as a USC fan, he's hoping that Urban Meyer comes to USC. That might be the next move for him. I mean, he loves those programs that have storied franchises and don't have a lot of competition around him. If he's going out west, now might be the time. Well, I'm not saying that to slam anybody, but you can't argue that the Pac-12 is not having a downturn, right?
No, it's just funny. But no,
there's a reason he ran off to Ohio State, because they don't play anybody and they're a good program.
What? Iowa, dude.
Yeah, look out. As opposed to Florida, who plays LSU and Alabama and Tennessee.
I know where he lives.
Yeah, exactly.
So we can.
All I'm saying is, kind of ran away from the Florida job. Kind of ran away from the Ohio State thing, too. I don't know that Urban Meyer's going out west, but if there's a chance to get him, it might be now.
Absolutely. Let's go on to the next game.
Let's talk about OK State playing against number 12 Texas. Number 12 Texas, again, didn't fall too far when they lost to LSU. It was a great game, but they really struggled against LSU's passing attack. The reason you should be watching this game is because OK State knows how to throw the ball. Not to mention, Mike Gundy has won 7 of his last 9 matchups against Texas. He has owned Texas. 5 of those wins have come on the road in Texas, like this one will be. I think this is going to be an interesting upset game for everybody to keep an eye on this week.
How far does Texas fall if they lose this game?
Far. They gave them the benefit of the doubt, but 2 in a row, and you're losing to an unranked OK State. I think this is going to be what drops them down to maybe 23, 24, 25, depending on how everything shakes out. If you lose 2 in a row like this, even though it's good competition in LSU, this might be what throws Texas way out of the conversation, and we're talking about how Texas isn't back now.
Yeah, I feel the same way. That's why I wanted to ask you.
No, I don't know that they're going to win this game, or they're going to lose this game. I still like Texas in this matchup. I think despite the defensive woes, they look pretty good scoring the ball on LSU. It was a shootout. I think OK State's defense is nowhere near as good as LSU's is, so this might turn into a shootout as well. But there's a chance that if they start slow and they're not on top of it, we have a big upset in Week 4 that kicks Texas out of the running.
I hope Texas wins. It's just because I'm a Big 12 fan, so. But we'll see.
Definitely. Let's talk about our next one. This is Game of the Week.
Pook says Texas needs some secondary work. He loves his Longhorns, though. There's a lot of fans out there, that's for sure.
My question is, was it their secondary, or can LSU just throw now for the first time ever?
I like this. You're having problems speaking.
I know. Since Zach Mettenberger, pretty much. Is this the first time LSU has been able to throw the rock since they had Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry and Zach Mettenberger? What a matchup, right? All 3 great players. Well, I don't know. I think that, Pooch, when you're talking about Texas and their secondary, there is a good chance that the secondary is weak and they need to fix that. But I also might think they might just got outplayed by a team that's found its mojo throwing the rock. Yeah. LSU has a dynamic offense. Again, we're going to learn more about Texas in this game, too. This is going to be the game that kind of tells us what this defense will look like going forward.
Ian says this is the kind of game that Oklahoma State University steps up for.
Precisely.
Absolutely.
It's a rivalry game. It's also one of those games that you know each other. Gundy has dominated Texas for the past 9 matchups, pretty much. So it's going to be 100% interesting.
Jonathan, I don't know if you missed it, man, but it's good to see you too, man. Glad you could join us once again.
Maybe came back in and out. Let's talk about Game of the Week. Number 7, Notre Dame, at number 3, Georgia. This even though it's early, I think almost doesn't matter who wins. I like Georgia in this matchup. This is going to be the first time either one of these teams plays significant competition. Georgia's beaten Vanderbilt. Yeah, SEC opponent. Yeah, they played defense, whatever, right? Murray State, Arkansas State. Notre Dame's played Louisville, and everyone talks up Louisville, but without Lamar Jackson, Louisville isn't really that good of a program. And they played New Mexico. Neither of these teams have played anybody good, and they're both sitting really, really high in the rankings. This is almost like a week one matchup.
Well, it's due from their season last year, and they assume that these historic franchises can keep it going. That being said, man, I know Georgia's the heavy favorite, but I really hope to see an upset here with Notre Dame winning this game.
I want Georgia to win it because I want someone besides Alabama to make it in the SEC. And if it's going to be someone, it's the dogs in Georgia, I think. Maybe LSU can get there, but I'm not buying that they're going to beat them in the West.
Well, maybe if they lose, they'll play a lot against Alabama a lot better.
True, and who knows? Maybe they win. Maybe they win this one. LSU beats Alabama by some flight of fancy, and then it's LSU and Georgia in the SEC championship.
Beyond that, who's really honestly beating Alabama? I mean, realistically.
LSU, maybe Auburn if they're the real deal. We'll talk about them in a little bit here. Actually, it's the last game on the board here. Maybe A&M could upset them if they play. I'm pretty sure they do. They're both in the West. The West is tough. To be fair, the West in the SEC is tough. The difference is Alabama gets to play rivalry games against Tennessee that can't find its ass with both hands, and
they're an up-and-coming team.
They're not going anywhere. Not for a while.
Come on, 7 wins, right?
Well, that's pretty optimistic for them. I think if they get to 6 and they find their way into a bowl game, after the way they lost their money games, Drew. You don't lose the money games and then find a way in the SEC to get into a bowl game. It just doesn't happen.
I'm just trying to give our Vols fans some encouragement here.
I know, but they have to play Florida. They have to play LSU. They have to play Alabama. Game, set, match. They're done.
Easy wins.
They get Vandy and Kentucky, and I don't know that they beat them. I don't. I mean, we don't know what Tennessee's going to look like here. Yeah, they beat Chattanooga last week. I'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. But it's Chattanooga. You won one of your 3 money games. That's not good. Not good at all.
Oh, man, it's rough.
All right, well, this game is definitely going to be interesting. Again, we're going to learn more about this. I'm going to bet on Jake Fromm here. I think with his experience and the way we've talked about him being a pro-level quarterback, this is the kind of game that you need to impress all the NFL players. I think the emphasis is going to be on him. There's kind of also talk about him being a game manager and how he's not, a sling-it kind of quarterback. Yeah. I think we might see them open up the offense a little bit, even though Georgia tends to be a little more conservative. They run the ball, they play the defense, and Notre Dame's defense has been very good up to this point. I think we might see Jake Fromm take a few more risks because he might be looking forward to his NFL career and say, I need to get drafted in the first round. I need to be in that conversation with Tua and guys like Jalen Hurts who are absolutely lighting the world on fire right now, and Justin Herbert. I need to be in that conversation or I'm going to slip to be a 3rd, 4th, 5th round pick, kind of like we saw with guys like Nate Stidham last year.
I think Jake Fromm will be a first-round pick in this draft.
Yeah, but you got to have a couple games. How many times have we seen seniors have a bad year or juniors in their last year and then have to come back to play another year because of it?
There's a lot of first-round quarterbacks that don't have great years before they go into the draft. Daniel Jones. So, I mean, I'm just throwing it out there. He's created enough tape on him for his college career that Jake Fromm deserves a first-round pick in the draft. And the way that NFL teams are, reaching for these quarterbacks, he's definitely one should be reached for.
Maybe this is your team's next best quarterback, too. So if your team needs a quarterback, Ian, looking at them Steelers, if Mason Rudolph doesn't work out, maybe Jake Fromm's the guy who falls to the bottom half of the first round or into the second round, not that the Steelers have lost their pick, that your team should consider. Maybe the Eagles take him as a backup. I know Jonathan's an Eagles fan. This might be the guy in the game to watch because he should absolutely be on teams in the back half of the first round or the top half of the second round. He should be on their radar right now.
Right.
100%. Also, Ian says the best thing about UT is the kid's fan homemade shirt. If you didn't see it, he was being bullied for it because he couldn't afford a UT shirt. He wound up drawing on pencil and putting on a shirt. Now he's got a scholarship to UT because he got bullied. The one thing I will say, and maybe this is me being a cynic here, Drew, but does this story come out if the Vols are 3-0?
When I got bullied, all I got were swirlies.
You're still waiting on that scholarship to come through?
Yeah.
It's a good story. I think it's a great story for a kid that absolutely deserves it. Takes a lot of courage and everything. For everyone who bashes social media, this doesn't get out there without social media. And
it's a great story.
It's a great story. I don't know that it's as much of an emphasis if UT's 3-0. This might be we're 0-2, and we've got a tough game against Chattanooga that shouldn't be tough. Maybe we need to talk about something else, and this was that story that came up at the right time. Hey, Jeremy, good to see you. Also, Jonathan has no need for next season. Make a move for Ramsey. He's going to go give up that first-round pick so the Eagles can bring in Jalen Ramsey. Well, apparently you and the Chiefs and everybody else that's good is considering trading him. I think that'd be a scary addition to the secondary for any team. We've talked about him, but again, would you give up taking a backup quarterback if you're Philadelphia with Wentz's injuries to bring in Jalen Ramsey? Let's say it's draft day, and somehow Jalen Ramsey sticks around. You don't have to make that decision. Would you trade for Jalen Ramsey with that pick, or would you take a quarterback like Jake Fromm?
Dude, I think the Eagles' Super Bowl window is still open, and
Okay.
I think with a great player like Jalen Ramsey would be a great addition. I mean, because there's no doubt about it, if there was a weakness on that defense, it's their secondary.
Mm-hmm.
But really, I think all hopes lie on Carson Wentz and his health. Problem is, that's this year. Even if he goes down, who do they got coming in there replacing him?
Well,
Josh
now
McCown?
nobody. Right, now nobody. Yeah.
I mean,
and Sudfeld is on IR. They lost someone else in there too. I can't remember who it was. Was it? It wasn't Paxton Lynch. I heard he was going to get picked up by somebody. They've lost a couple quarterbacks to this point. So yeah, I'm 100% with you. It doesn't solve any immediate problem. I think I'd rather have Jalen Ramsey than take the quarterback. But I think the Eagles could consider drafting a quarterback and go with the Nick Foles situation, almost the Washington Cousins and RG3 situation, where you have two quarterbacks, but with the injury rate, that doesn't wind up being a bad thing. And Ian says he would love to see Ramsey in Seattle. I would too. I would love to see him out of my division and as far away from my team as you can get him. Can it happen before tomorrow? I'd love to see him not play on Thursday night.
Jonathan said Sudfeld is not on IR and he dressed on Sunday.
Doesn't he? No, he has a broken wrist.
I'm not for sure.
He got hurt in the Titans preseason game with a broken wrist. Maybe he's back already, but that would be really quick. I would check on that one.
I'm not 100% sure. So.
I'm almost 100% sure he broke his wrist, but that's okay. Maybe he's back. Maybe it was a quicker recovery or a smaller break than I thought. I thought it was like going to be an 8 to 12 week injury because he absolutely messed up his wrist. Just 3 weeks.
All right.
Well,
cool.
I'm glad he's back.
Me too.
From what I heard, the last thing I heard, and I'm not on like Eagles backup quarterback watch,
What?
was that he was going to be out for a while. But I'm glad that he's back.
Well, this
That's
is
a
the
good thing
last
to have.
episode for Jake around Sports Around the Bar. We all know the most important thing is to know what is going on with every NFL team's backup quarterback.
I know. I feel you. Last thing I heard, he died. So, back from the dead, Nate Sudfeld. I'm glad he's back.
Darn hangnail.
Finally, Drew, I'm going to ask you a pick here. Are you going to take Georgia or are you going to take Notre Dame? Who wins this one in the battle of like the first real matchup for both these teams?
I'll say it again. I want Notre Dame to win, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah. I'm with you. I think Georgia wins this one. There's a reason they're sitting at number 3 in the nation. I think the defense steps up. I think they're going to run the rock a little bit. I think it stays tight. And I think Jake Fromm maybe takes a few chances that maybe backfire a little bit. I got to go Georgia, though. I just have to go Georgia here. And Jeremy, see, I knew I liked you for a reason. He says I'm number 1. That's a Colts fan and a Titans fan reaching each other.
Steven, say I'm number 1, man.
Don't say that. Oakland fan, KC, it could never work. Also, Steven says the Eagles Super Bowl hope are gone. Their hope signed with the Jaguars and got hurt. That's rude, but then again, I don't know that he's wrong. I think with Carson Wentz, you want to have that backup quarterback. How do we get on the NFL? You want to have a backup quarterback that can kind of assure things and say, if something happens to him, we're still good. They don't have that now in Nate Sudfeld or anybody else in that locker room. Josh McCown, doesn't matter who it is. If something happens to Carson Wentz now, the Eagles are up a creek without a paddle.
Yeah, no doubt. Frank, good to see you, man. He's going for Notre Dame for the upset. So is Jeremy. And Ian is going Georgia. Couple upsets. I'm with you.
I still want to see Georgia win because, again, give me anything but Clemson, Alabama again, and I think the fastest route to that is the Bulldogs find a way to win in the SEC championship. I really do believe that. I think, again, even if they do beat Alabama, and that's the first time, we're going to see an Alabama team squeak in at that 4th spot in the playoff. If it's going to happen, though, you're going to need a team like either Georgia or LSU to stick around all season long. And losing to Notre Dame, while early and still a highly ranked team, is going to be enough that it's going to keep Georgia out of the running in a lot of frames, I guess, or a lot of people's opinions.
Jeremy makes me drink. My emotions and my
Ian, there can only be one you have to pick. He says we're both number 1. That's like tying, and that's worse than losing.
So when I hang myself tonight, the note will be, Jeremy did this.
The Colts finally beat the Chiefs. He was kidding, of course. Not a funny topic.
Kidding. What?
Not a funny topic.
Oh, there's humor in everything.
Save it for the other podcast. All right.
There's humor in everything.
And Jeremy says Ian Brooks is going to go off on the Georgia defense. Again, There's a possibility of that. This is going to be like a week 1 game where these teams finally have to play a good team, and there might be some shell shock where you're not used to playing top-level talent because, except for Vanderbilt, there's not really and okay, you could say Louisville, I guess, they're kind of on par.
Right.
Neither of those teams need to be playing Notre Dame and Georgia. We're talking about 2 different worlds here. This is the first time we have like a heavyweight matchup for one of these teams. It's going to be really, really hard to predict. I think Georgia's defense might be tougher than people think, too. All right. We'll move forward. We'll talk about our next game, which is Michigan, number 11, going on the road to Wisconsin. Drew, Wisconsin is the highest scoring team per game in college football. I get it was against Cupcakes, but they are putting up over 50 points a game right now offensively. And Michigan had to go to overtime against Army.
Right.
Had to play 2 halves to beat a team like Middle Tennessee State, which my alma mater, of course, they're powerhouses, that lost all their talent last year. They lost their quarterback. They lost their top receiver in Pat Smith. They've lost so much talent, and Michigan still didn't get ahead of this team until the 3rd quarter last week in week 1. They've had a week to kind of adjust because they were off on week 3. Week 4, do we see a better Michigan team? Remember, I'm the idiot who picked them to win the Big Ten. Do we see a better Michigan team, please?
I would think that this would be a better outing for Michigan because even though they're ranked higher, a lot of people are considering Michigan to be the underdog in this fight.
Yeah, especially on the road. And
right.
Yeah.
Against the highest scoring offense, too.
Now, again, how much of that's a fluke? When you do it against 2 smaller schools that don't actually matter and you're going to go run up the score on them, do we actually believe in the offense that much? I think Michigan's defense is going to rally a little bit. They're going to have a week off to prepare for this game. They're getting their best receiver back, whose name escapes me, but he's an NFL prospect this year. Michigan is going to be much more formidable, I hope, for the guy who picked them this week than they have been in weeks past. But if we see another situation like against Army, where Army was running the rock all over them and MTSU hanging with them for an entire half, Michigan's going to lose this game, and it's going to get ugly.
Yeah.
It's put up or shut up time for Jim Harbaugh. And we talk about him a lot in college football.
No doubt.
It's put up or shut up time. This is the first week he needs to put up if he's going to hang on to that job in Michigan.
Jonathan says Pac-12, Washington State University, Mike Leake, Coach of the Year.
Coach of the Year for the Pac-12. The Pac-12 potentially. I mean, it's wide open. It's wide open. It could be Oregon. It could be. It could still be Utah. I think Utah could run the table, go undefeated in the Pac-12, and find a backdoor into the college football playoff. I don't see it happening, but it could happen.
Could.
I think the Pac-12 is wide open, and not the same way the SEC is wide open because there's so much talent. I think the Pac-12 is a step down from most of the rest of the country.
Right. Ian says that Wisconsin is too quick on offense for Michigan. He's saying a 38-14 win for Wisconsin.
Well, we saw them get overpowered. I don't know that there was a speed issue against Army. We saw them get overpowered by that triple option attack that Army runs, where they never throw the ball and there's always the fullbacks running it, the halfbacks getting the pitch sometimes. They got overpowered in that game a lot.
I've watched them play a whole bunch when I was living in Colorado Springs when I would go to Air Force games. They love that option.
Yeah, and we saw Michigan get overpowered in that. I don't know that Wisconsin's going to be able to just totally overpower a defense like Michigan's is. And again, 2 weeks to prepare for it. Even though it's on the road, they're getting their best player back in that receiver whose name, again, I can't think of right now. They're getting one of their best prospects back. I think Michigan's going to make this a challenge. I'll take them. I went all in on them. I shoved at the beginning of the season saying they're going to be the team to win the Big Ten with Ryan Day coming in at Ohio State. I'm going to say they're going to beat Wisconsin here.
All right, what's the next game on the agenda?
Let's talk about Florida and Tennessee. Again, not a premier matchup, but this is a matchup that has a lot of risk for a team highly ranked in Florida. Felipe Franks is going to be out for the rest of the season, so it's all on junior Kyle Trask to step in. He went 9 for 13 against Kentucky in that game where they lost Felipe Franks, Drew.
Right.
Do they continue to have success against a team that's as bad as UT is? Or has been as bad as UT is?
Yeah, this is a huge loss for Florida. A good win for them, but a huge loss in Franks. This is, obviously in all football aspect, it's always the next man up mentality. But I don't think with this, it's the next man. I think it's the whole team needs to step up. If they want to be anywhere considered good for the rest of the season, I know they're ranked number 9 right now. But this Tennessee team is hungry for wins. They're disappointed in their first couple of games, even though they just won one. This is going to be a tough matchup, and I agree with you. It should be on the boards, and a lot of people should be paying attention to this game.
Yep, you should watch the Tennessee game for the fact of the injury to the quarterback. What does he look like? Because even though this week should be in the bag, Florida's defense is so good they should be able to frustrate Tennessee all day and all night. This is going to get ugly, folks. They might even be able to win if they only played their defense all game long. For 60 minutes, defense versus offense, they might generate enough points defensively to beat a team like Tennessee. But I still think they're at risk here. I think this is one of those games that if they kind of take Tennessee lightly, who's got some momentum now, having beaten up on a team like Chattanooga.
And they got a lot to prove.
Definitely. I mean, nobody's been had more egg on their face, I'd say, than Tennessee has for this first part of the season,
Yeah,
right?
the start of the season for sure.
Absolutely. So watch this game. Watch more about what Florida has done versus what this numbers actually looks like.
Right.
This is about, is Florida going to be a contender going forward, or did the season die with Felipe Franks last week? Finally, Auburn at number 8 going on the road to face number 17 Texas A&M. Gus Malzahn versus Jimbo Fisher. Two great SEC coaches matching up with each other again, both in the West. It's a shame all that talent's on that side of the conference. Or we could actually have some compelling football in the SEC.
I'm hoping for the upset with Texas A&M. I know they played Clemson really well last week. It was a close game. I'm just, for some reason, I've always liked Texas A&M. I don't know what it is about them, but I really hope this might be an upset against Auburn.
Now Ian says yawn. UT for the win. They have to somehow get the 2000 team back. He says Florida 28-21 in a yawner. This is going to be. I'm going to say it's going to be 21-6. I think Florida's offense is going to struggle a little bit. I think the defense is just going to feast on UT. Jared Garantano is going to absolutely get run over in this game. Florida's defense looks amazing. Look at the way they beat up the Hurricanes. Much better team than Tennessee is right now.
Yeah.
I'm still going to say Florida's going to be okay, but you should pay attention. There's still upset value here. And if you're betting on these games, maybe you take the line in Tennessee that is playing better with Chattanooga under their belt.
I mean, you got to understand, you bring in someone like Task, regardless if he's a junior or not, he's not used to having that pressure on him. Mistakes happen. And I get UT has looked absolutely atrocious so far, but that does not mean that this team can't create turnovers against a quarterback that's not familiar with being a starter.
Absolutely. And Ian's saying A&M is becoming the best team in Texas. They might already be there. And this is a shot at the Longhorns. But when you look at the way Jimbo Fisher's already changed this program here, this is only his second year, Drew. 3 or 4 years from now, Alabama's going to have some legit competition. Jimbo Fisher, look at the way Florida State fell apart when he left. Yeah. It's all about the coach in college football. He is going to put Texas A&M on the map. I think he might already be the best team out there. That's why I say Auburn is going to lose this one. I'm also taking the upset. Auburn had a great win against Oregon. Aside from that, they played a couple money games where you're not really playing legit competition. Right. This is going to be a challenge for a team that stacked up pretty well against Clemson, ultimately lost that game, but this isn't Clemson they're playing right now. They barely beat Oregon. They're going to struggle against Jimbo Fisher. Watch for A&M to win this one and get back in the championship race. I don't think they're dead in the water yet, losing to Clemson.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Steven says, Air Force, how about those Falcons beat on Colorado and now sitting at 2-0? I know, man. I miss going to those games. Yeah, I don't know if any of you guys have an opportunity to go to any of the armed forces games, including Navy, Army. It's super exciting to be there. And even the Texas A&M, we know that's that college is built around an Army base. It's a lot of fun to be there, and it's great to sit there and support the troops.
Yep, absolutely. Now, also, Steven says that A&M is clearly the best in Texas, at least at this time. I think Texas is still pretty good. We saw them keep pace with LSU, which is still a good defense. I think it's probably neck and neck. But A&M's looking better by the day with Jimbo Fisher. I think there's only a matter of time before he out-recruits everybody, and A&M's suddenly one of these powerhouses out there in Texas.
Right.
All right, Drew, I think that's going to do it. I think we got some special thanks. Again, fun show, guys. College football, there's finally something to watch. I can't wait for that. This past couple weeks when I've had to sell the whole, hey, watch out for these money games, that's in the past. I'm glad that's behind us.
Guys, thank you again for your likes, comments, and shares, and we appreciate everything you guys do for us. This would not be Sports Around the Bar without you guys and the strong community that you guys create with us. But I do want to give special thanks for everyone that commented out there, and if I missed any of your comments, I'm so sorry. But Pooks, Ian, Hannah, Jonathan, Jeremy, Stephen, Frank, you guys are a staple point in so many shows. We appreciate you joining us this evening.
Fun show, guys. We will be back on Friday to talk about all the action in the NFL coming up in week 3. Yeah, 3. Also, go Titans on Thursday night. I know you'll be watching. It's the most exciting game of the week. Titans-Jaguars in Jacksonville. I can't wait to be back to brag about my Titans scrape their way to a 2-1 record. I hope to catch you then. So for Sports Around the Bar, I am Jake. This is Drew. We will see you on Friday.
See.